Welcome, my friends, to another Alliteration gaming video. My name's Levi, and today I've got a special guest for you guys. I've got the man, the myth, the legend, Kyle Wright himself on for an interview and deck profile based on his top 4 performance in the most recent online webcam provisional with Mineta II on the water symbol. So a little bit of history. Back when I first started playing the game, I was really privy to all of the things going on at the first Gen Con where the game was previewed. I was really excited to see just the concept of a Hero Academia trading card game. Didn't know any of the history with Jasco and Universus and all that. I just thought, hey, these cards look cool, can't wait to hear more about it. And then years passed, COVID passed, quarantine passed, all that nonsense happened, and the game just kind of like had no updates for a long time. Then, one day, I'm playing other card games at my local card shop, talking about the My Hero game, and out of nowhere, this man, Kyle Wright, walks up and says, yeah, we got some demo decks. Do you guys want to learn how to play? And I said, heck yeah, I do. And then a few months later, the game came out, and here we are. So if it wasn't for this man, I wouldn't know how to play the game, and I wouldn't be here, the channel wouldn't be here, and none of this would exist. So a big round of applause for our man Kyle for being my essentially my mentor and my overstudy in this game. But enough about my relationship with Kyle. I want you guys to know about Kyle himself. Kyle, tell me about you, a little bit about yourself, and then kind of your history with card games and what brought you over to Universus.
Well, I'm an actor based out of Houston and a voice actor based out of Houston. So hopefully someday I'll be in the card game as a character.
Remember the little people, Kyle. Remember the little people, okay?
I will remember people, of course. I'm trained in stage theater, so that's that. I started playing the game like 4, almost 5 years ago. The new set was Red Horizon 3. And then my first set release was Street Fighter 30th anniversary. So that's when I got started. So technically right now I'm at my first actual full rotation 4 years later. I'm originally from Omaha as well. I'm not from Houston. So I learned how to play from the great folks over at Omaha, including Barrett Bryant, Tam Cardwell, and Jacob Johnson. Those 3 are probably the ones who taught me the most about playing this game. And I've been playing. I've only had a few events that I've done super well at. This being one of them. And then I did well at the playtest event from My Hero that Rochester did. I got 3rd with, at the time it was called Candied Apple, but it was Ochako 2. I also did well at one of the Updog retro tournaments. I got 6th, 7th, something like that.
You have the mat, right?
Yes. Not in front of me though.
Yeah, so you've been pretty involved in the game for a very long time, and then also very involved through a lot of the early stages of MHA, but I also know that you had some pretty strong feelings about MHA when it first came out, especially in a lot of the competitive aspects of it, and I would kind of like to know what those sentiments were, and then how you felt it's changed, and what's led to you being excited to compete nowadays.
So initially with MHA, my issue upon the first announcements of MHA were just that, you know, I got into the game to play Mega Man. I walked into my local game store, saw a Mega Man starter deck, and picked it up because I wanted to play Mega Man, right? And then I fell in love with the game because there were tons of different IPs and all that, right? So my initial issue with MHA, personally, was that, which isn't really a competitive thing, but just that it was an IP that I honestly don't care about. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm not a fan.
So it's okay.
Yeah. Right. And then competitively, my big issue was just that there were so many mechanics that were fun and interactive that they just kind of gutted, and I felt, especially with set 1, that they were just kind of pussyfooting around certain abilities and making things just very tame. And therefore lame. As well as set 1 was just also super aggressive with next to no control after Kurashima was dealt with, and it just wasn't a meta that I enjoyed playing in.
Yeah, I can imagine just from like a going from standard with multiple IPs and all these crazy mechanics and keywords down to the singular IP that you're not particularly fond of, and then also just a huge like dumbing down of the game in a sense. I can imagine it was very much like a culture shock, especially you as a much more defensive player. You couldn't really play how you wanted to in set 1.
For sure. I mean, the first deck that came out that I really felt a connection with was when Toru came out, which was what, like 4 or 5 months down the road, something like that.
Yeah, it was
like,
a little bit
it was
in the first provisionals, basically, right?
Yeah, which I mean, it took a while for those to happen. So yeah, that was the first deck that I really felt was like a more mid-rangey control deck that I resonated with better. That came out. At least after Kurashima got hit. But then when set 2 dropped, they introduced a lot of different more controlling mid-rangey characters and cards that allowed those characters to thrive better, and specifically my new baby Mineta.
The grape overlord.
Yes, that I have embraced the meme life with, because I actually don't like the character at all in the anime.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Like a season and a half, but I absolutely hate the character in the anime. But I love him mechanically in this game.
Yeah, I know historically. Yeah, card pool stuffing is very much your mechanic. That's very much the play style that you've always enjoyed in the game. So you kind of just have to take the lick of being associated with Mineta now in this format.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what am I gonna do? Not play my favorite mechanic in the game? Because I mean, the last character that I played was able to play that was really good with card pool stuffing got banned in standard pretty quickly. So. But Mineta, I don't see going anywhere. He's good, but he's not good enough for them to deal with him, at least right now.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people thought the opposite in the early days of Set 2 testing. People were very ready to see this character get the preemptive axe.
I was just sitting there like, God, like he's good, but he's not that good.
Yeah, I think it was kind of... Again, just a little bit of that culture shock, right? Because in set 1, we didn't really have a lot of characters like that said, like, hey, stop, slow down, play the game on my terms. I know that
sure.
as a player, that's very much the type of style that you really, really enjoy.
Absolutely, and I think it's good that we have started to have some of these slower, more controlling decks introduced into the format. I think it's going to help the player base grow a lot as players, because one of the biggest hurdles in the game, especially for new people and for me as well, was learning how to overcome characters that slow you down to their level.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges in card games. Like, okay, this is a control deck. How do I adapt to it? How do I play around it? It's very much, a big thing to overcome. In the first 2 tournaments in set 2, everyone pretty much said, yeah, Mineta is this really scary character. You can fight him. However, if you're unprepared to fight against him, he's going to roll over you. You won't even get to play the game.
For sure. And there were a lot of people, especially early on, that were believing that because of that, that Mineta was going to be another one of those free wins characters, a character that just kind of went in there and got to just steal wins because his name was Mineta, right?
Right.
Which I think it has been proven at this point that unless it's a very specific matchup, is not the case.
Agreed.
Yeah. He requires more time and more thought in his plays in order to do well with him. Because if you're not good at playing Mineta, you're never gonna top, because you're going to have four ties.
Yeah, you need to know how to play your character, because the second you fight someone who doesn't just play right into you is when you actually have to start thinking yourself, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Can you tell me about some of your favorite aspects of the game and or memories and events associated with through all of your years as a fair bit of an old head that you are?
Old head. I am surprised that I am now considered that, but I guess I am.
To a baby like myself, absolutely.
I think my favorite thing I ever did, me and a local, Stefan, were playing at our local tournament, right? and this was right when Shiva had came out. She was brand new, and Shiva was a forehand size character from Standard that just said at the beginning of your turn you get to slap 3 cards from the top of the opponent's deck into their card pool. And then she could discard cards out of her hand or out of the opponent's pool to either draw or make cards stick across the turn. I was able to set up a situation over the course of like 3 or 4 turns where I ended up having, I think it was 12 cards stuck cross turn into Stefan's pool.
Wow.
I was very proud of that Shiva deck that day.
That's pretty disrespectful, Kyle. Maybe maybe one day Mineta 12 dot will get there.
yeah, possibly.
For now, you'll have to be happy with your 1.
Damn it.
And so I guess before we get on to your actual profile, speaking of guys like Stefan, do you have any locals that you want to shout out, or just people that helped you get where you are today in general?
Well, of course, I'm gonna shout out my best bud, Barrett Bryant. We've known each other since high school, and he's a brother to me. And he taught me a lot of the things that I know about this game. And of course, to Tamron Cardwell, the man who played my first game of UFS with me.
Wow.
I picked up my Proto Man deck and walked into that locals with a Proto Man starter deck, and was paired against Tam the first round.
Heck yeah.
and he schooled me with his Dr. Wily deck.
Oh yeah, he put the Tam talk on you.
He pounded my butt in, but it was so much fun. And he also helped to teach me a lot, as well as Jacob Johnson. Jacob Johnson is another close friend of mine from high school that also taught me a lot about how to play this game. And really just to all of my locals for helping me play test, putting up with my bullcrap at locals playing Mineta, even though a lot of them do not necessarily enjoy sitting across the table from him. So thank you to everybody who helped me get there with this character that I love to play so much.
Yeah, I mean it's really awesome to see, you know, you list all of these really big names. So it's really cool to see you join a lot of them up there now with some of these big top results. And of course, as the person who taught me the game, I have a pretty high opinion of you myself. So it's really awesome to see you finally get to be where you deserve, right?
I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Well, guys, that is Kyle Wright, the man himself, my mentor and my teacher of the Universus / MHA CCG. And now we're going to get onto the deck profile that he took this big, awesome top cut performance with, Mineta on the water symbol. Hey you like the My Hero Academia collectible card game, right? If the answer is at least a resounding probably, you should head right on over to unfunstuff.com for all of your MHA CCG purchasing needs. We've got the new set Heroes Clash on pre-order, as well as the new DLC 2 in stock. And if you want to use coupon code Wealthy Aspirations, you can get 5% off your entire freaking order, and also support old Levi a little bit along the way. The link for all this is going to be right down in the description below, so get on over there and go yourself some amazing product from some amazing people. Back to the video. Alright guys, and now it's time to go over the deck that we've been talking about so much. We've said so much about Mineta, but now let's kind of actually take a look at what he does. Mineta is a 5-hand size, 31 health character. He's got Death, Evil, and Water. For this profile, we're going to be playing him on Water, and he's got 2 very powerful enhances. Every turn, you can shove one of your rival's foundations into their card pool, and then they only get to replace it if it's their turn. And then, not once per turn, every attack you can pitch a momentum to make an attack 0 speed and draw a card. So essentially every momentum you generate is going to be a card replacing itself and making an attack easy to block. Kyle, I know you've been very hot on this character ever since he got revealed. You've been testing him day in and day out. Just kind of give me the rundown on what you like about him so much, what he does that other characters don't, and kind of why you think he's a good choice in the meta, and ultimately why you brought him into this provisional tournament.
Well, the number one reason why I like this character is because he is a card pool stuffing character,
Of course.
Right? It's card pool stuffing is a mechanic that is extremely unique to Universus. you'd be hard pressed in other card games to find a comparable type of ability, at least in my opinion. And I just think that's really cool, and that's why I like goofing around with card pool stuffing, because it's so unique to Universus itself. The other reason why is I also am a fan of 5-hand size characters. I like having a bit of a butt on my character, so I can take a hit. I don't like losing because my character's made of paper. I
think it's so funny that after having taught me the game, you produced probably the most 7-hand size character obsessed player alive. I am so averse to 5-handers, and I just think that's so funny as a result of you teaching me the game.
Hey, I mean, to each their own. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I've never played a 7-hander before. I certainly have. Because I did play Zhonghua in Standard for a long time, and she's messed up. But yeah, so I like 5-handers, I like card pool stuffing, and the other ability on him is just very, very good in general. I decided to go with this character over any other character that I was going with in the meta, because I knew while Momo was going to be there, and Mineta has a god-awful Momo matchup.
It's not great, that's for sure.
It's pretty bad. Momo, she's too hard for your average player, and so she just was going to be very underrepresented. So my goal was basically to just dodge the Momo matchup, because I feel like Mineta has a very good matchup against every other character in the field, pretty much.
Yeah, I don't feel great going into him, really, as any other character.
For sure. And like, specifically, he has a really good matchup against the most common decks right now, which are your free wins, turn 1 kill decks, that people really, really like to play. You know, the average new Universus player really, really likes to play that, and Mineta is really good at just saying, no, you don't get to kill me on turn 1. That was sort of the reason I went with him for this event.
Yeah, no, you and I are both very long game oriented players. Very not a big fan of dealing with those hyper aggro turn 1 decks like the Fire Tokoyamis, the Air Jiros, the Ochakos of all the like, the Ochako 2s, you know, things like that. They really struggle to execute that game plan against Mineta, and I think that's definitely one of the strongest, if not the strongest aspect about him in the meta right now.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I as a player very much just really want to sit down and be like, okay, I understand that you don't really want to play a game with me because you just want to kill me on turn 1, but I'm gonna make you play this game with me. You have to play it.
Yeah, you must improvise, adapt, and overcome, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the kind of characters that I really like to play, is characters that make the opponent really play the game. So starting off with the attack lineup, we got 4 copies of Tongue Whip. I was not on this card super early in Mineta's life, because I initially, my initial reaction to the card when Mineta came out was that it was just it required him to have more cards than he had access to. But as I tested and as I played with the card more and more, because at a minimum it's a 6 low for 6 in him.
Yeah, it's very free. It's very free.
Yeah, right? And on top of that, you can just randomly murder people out of nowhere. You know, you get like 2 of this and a grasping. I mean, that's like 14 damage from these things if you play them all. Right?
Yeah,
so
yeah. Tongue Whip, it's kind of like, Tongue Whip is just kind of one of those cards that's like, it's almost like a 4 diff 1.3 million volts.
Yeah. And then the
bit of a smaller ceiling.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other big aspect of it is that it is a 2 low block, which, as Levi may point out, this deck has some really weird ratios in its block zones.
Yeah, your block zones are a little sus. You have, I think, 16 highs, 14 lows, and 33 mids. But we are the water symbol, so those numbers are a little misleading, but we'll see more of that once we get to the foundations.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So that's that. Next attack is going to be the tried and true Grasping Tape Toss. As we all know, this card is ridiculous. stun 1, forces your opponent to block it, or you get to selectively commit the best thing on their board. It's a throw, and it has one of the best, if not the best, deadlock ability in the game.
It is
specifically a good deadlock ability against Momo, because it debuilds it to the bottom of the deck as opposed to in the pool where she can interact with it. So this throw is just very, very good, and I feel like Mineta, especially right now in the current meta, just kind of needs to run it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, the power of throws in Mineta is unrivaled. The guaranteed momentum, guaranteed replace in itself, and guaranteed letting you make something very blockable on the next turn is all just very strong interaction with your character. And as prominent as the throw hate in the game is, it kind of just means you have to double up on them as much as possible to just fight through it, right?
Yeah, for sure. With the amount of throws that Mineta has access to, it's very difficult for somebody to actually just have all of the throw hate that they could possibly need to deal with what he's putting out at you. So.
Yeah, there's just not any alternate strategies, I think, that are stronger because of how well your character interacts with them, that it's still just more worth it to just fight through them as much as you can.
For sure. Alright. So, 4 copies of that. Next up, we have 4 copies of Tape Swing, a card that a lot of people don't run because they're scared of this number right here.
That's me.
I have a little baby, man. That's me. Can't do it.
I'm here to tell all y'all that are scared of this too that disregard this too. This card is absolutely broken. This card's ridiculously good because it's a throw without using the throw keyword, and you cannot Faith Shield it if you leave it mid. Right? So you get to swap around the zone and then increase the damage every time you swap around the zone. So you have multiple ways to swap around the zone inside of your deck as well as on its face. So you don't even need to use momentum in this deck necessarily to swap around the zone to get that damage increase. But as long as you put it back to mid, I mean, they can't Faith Shield it, they can't block it with the average Breaker 2 block, they can't block it with a Cheerful Uppercut, like the card is just a super mean piece in Mineta because it basically just makes it impossible unless they have a Walkling, of which you have options for in the deck as well. Unless they have a Walkling, it just makes it impossible for them to not take damage from this card.
Yeah, it's really, really, really hard to interact with, as opposed to a lot of the other throws. And of course, even those minute interactions that do exist, you have answers because you're the water symbol.
Exactly. So the card's ridiculously good in Mineta and in multiple other characters. And I feel like it should probably see more representation than it honestly does.
I agree. I think people have very much kind of put themselves in the mindset in that, like, this is a Sero card, and that's kind of where it ends. But it has a lot of other applications as well.
Absolutely. Because, like, on average in this deck, I'm not really using the momentum ability. I'm just using it because it's a 6 damage throw that they can't Faith Shield, right? But, I mean, I can also, of course, use it as just a monstrous kill card in a turn if I need to, which is great.
Yeah, like, the second your opponent gets to, like, you know, like 8 or less life, they suddenly have to start making a lot of plans to have to deal with this card as just an alternate win condition at that point.
Exactly, because the second I draw this card, if they don't have an option to deal with it, it's pretty much game. Next up, we have our defensive baby, Cheerful Uppercut. This card's nuts.
So good.
two mid block that responds to stuff the top card of both players' decks into their pools on block, which you don't care about on your end because your name is Mineta. You can just put the thing to 0 speed anyway, so you can kind of get through it, right? And on top of that, it's a pretty good aggressive card because it's 5 speed and 4 damage, but then you can discard a momentum for an extra 4 damage. So, like, you can definitely kill people with this card. You can see in my stream game from the event against Sugar that I actually killed him in one of my games by dropping 2 of this card. As the best option.
Yeah, 5 low for 8 is like no joke.
For sure, absolutely. But I mean, in the end, the card is here because it says respond, stuff the opponent's pool on block, right? It gets you this card mixed with Mineta is a double stuff, mixed with Sticky Balls is a triple stuff. And between Mineta, this card, and Sticky Balls, I mean, it's very tough to not be double stuffing at them at a bare minimum right out the gate.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any deck that can continue to aggress through double stuff. It's really, really, really hard. It's also messing up their combos, and like even early game when they just want to like throw one attack and then build a few foundations, it can be even better than something like Breaker 1 or Breaker 2.
So this card's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And to close out the attack lineup, we of course have Mineta's own rare. This card is stupid as hell. It's very, very overstated in my opinion. It's a 4-mid for 6/1 mid block with stun 1 and fury, and it says if the opponent has a card in their pool, you get to draw a card. And so it also
always
says, yep, yeah. If you're playing Mineta, you get to draw a card. And it also says it gains throw and 2 damage if its speed is below printed, which is not hard to do in this deck. Between Mineta's face himself and all the foundations and stuff we have in this deck, it's very, very easy to get this thing there. And it'll make your opponent do things like increase the speed of this attack to try and make me not gain throw. Well, generally in response, unless I have a way to just get it down there anyway and give it throw, generally in response to that, I will start increasing the speed on it.
Yeah, and just make it a real fast mid attack for 6 damage normally.
Yeah, which is great, which is absolutely great. So it's just a really mean card to drop against the opponent, and another just very strong throw with a good block. And it's just everything that Mineta wants. Yeah. It does everything Mineta could possibly want it to do.
Yeah, card was absolutely just made for Mineta.
All right, and that's the attack lineup. Next up, considering good is against throw hate, we have Sports Festival Stadium. Just 1 copy of it in the main board. I mean, we all know this card. We saw people stacking it with Unwavering Slash and stuff.
That's crazy. Those were crazy times.
Yeah, they were crazy times. Card's really good with this deck because obviously you can discard Faith Shield. You can also do stuff like discard Breaker blocks, or just discard anything in general if you know they're not Faith Shielding or Breaker blocking something, or if this is the only attack, right? And just get that extra draw off, right? And just extend your hand just that little bit more, which is just really good in Mineta. And then on top of that, the static ability is really solid in Mineta II since you're running a bunch of throws, because it just extends your damage that much.
Yeah, it's super strong. A lot of really good applications. Of course, it's good with throws, and like if you get them to the point where like you know they're not blocking anything else anyway, you're literally just getting a free draw out of it for no reason whatsoever.
For sure. I think in the future I'm going to be testing maining 2 and actually sideboarding 2 as well.
Yeah, it's really important.
And how important this card is. And now moving on to the foundations. We're going to start off with Gotcha, the Zero Diff. It's mainly in here because it's a low block.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. It's a low block on a Zero Diff. Good stat numbers, but every once in a while the ability comes up, so that's cool. But it's mostly in here because just because we needed that extra low block.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense why it's only 2 copies.
4 copies of Mineta's Foundation surviving the final. This card is incredible. This card is amazingly good. Just once per turn you get to enhance for -1 speed, and then it's a 0 diff high block that checks a 5. Card's just a fantastic defensive piece. Allows you to, without paying any real costs, set up that Mineta throw with lower speed.
This is definitely your easiest way to turn on Grape Rush for sure.
Next up, 4 copies of Tape. This card is one of the big reasons why you kind of get away with playing such a weird block zone count. I just think it's a very strong, solid card, and I think it's a 4 of in every deck that can play it, honestly.
I absolutely agree, yeah.
And on top of that, if you need to, you can actually use this aggressively in 2 different ways, because you can use this to give -2 speed to your Mineta throw if it's your only option, to set up that throw if you need to do that. But you can also use it on your own tape swing and make it mid after you've changed the zone several times and gets that extra damage.
Yeah, that's a really, really cool application that it has inside of this deck specifically.
4 copies of Ice Gliding. Now I know Mineta does reduce a lot of speed on his face, But the main reason why I'm running so much speed hate in this deck is because Mineta, if you have one momentum in Mineta, it kind of puts your opponent in a position where they almost don't want to put down their big kills against you, because you're just going to put it to 0 speed and block it.
Right. You don't want to feel like you're forced to 0 speed something ever.
Exactly. On top of that, obviously, it's also a good aggressive card because it can increase speed on your attacks when you need it, so it's just all around a good spam. And then last for the spam lineup, we have Struggling with Studies. Yeah, being able to have this card out and say, if you put your 3rd attack on the board, I am going to pick up my 2 mid block that stuffs your pool and block with it again. But on top of that, as well, this card protects my sticky balls from Apathetic.
Also true, yeah.
It sits there and makes my opponent not want to attack me. Half the time, the ability doesn't actually get used because the opponent never plays their 3rd attack against me if it's on the board and I've blocked with a good card, right? So that's that. That is the spam lineup. Moving on to our non-spams. We're going to start off with 3 Creepy Realization. Everybody knows this card. This card's super good.
That's crazy good.
Yeah, especially because of how much I can stuff on the opponent's turn. I mean, I'm potentially giving like -4, -5 damage off of one of them to the opponent's attack, so that's super messed up. But also, if I use it aggressively, it can just like end games out of nowhere. And the big thing about why I'm maining 3 is Momo.
Momo, Jiro, a lot of characters is quite good against.
Any of those characters, this card just messes with. So having 3 copies of it main board was just very important for me in those matchups as well. 2 copies of Frozen. Obviously, this card can help tap out the opponent if you need to tap them out. The main thing it's in here for is if I, for some reason, am afraid of somebody's deadlock, though.
Frozen's just kind of one of those cards that can sometimes be the make or break card, whether you win or lose a game.
Plus, it's also a 2 high block, which helps with the zones again.
Your very sus zones.
My very, very sus zones. Moving on. Next up, 2 main board Irrefutable Force of Nature. This is to deal with Walkling and Momo.
Makes sense, yeah.
Plus, it's a low block, so.
Yeah, that card's sitting there and saying you can't Walkling my Tape Swing, turning off Rescue Completed, Apathetics. Just so many good uses for it.
1 Self-Assured. I love 1 Self-Assured in decks that don't have a ton of ranged attacks. Every once in a while the draw ability comes up, but it's not super relevant. It's mainly just because it says commit, change the zone, thus allowing me to once a turn circumvent the fact that I don't have very many high and low blocks. This card is puts in a lot of work every time it hits the board.
Again, same logic with like tape, right? Being able to make anything a mid and then have a very powerful interactive block with it is so good.
The other thing is you can also, again, use this aggressively in the same way that you can use it in tape, and use it to swap around the zone on Tape Swing. 3 copies of Walkling. Again, just another card that is circumventing these weird zones, and also obviously Throw Hate, and just a generically good card overall. 2 copies of First Villain Encounter. I have a love-hate relationship with this card, because on one hand, the Deadlock ability makes it so that the opponents almost never build into Deadlock against me. Between this and the other, in the attack, Grasping Tape Toss, most of the time my opponents almost never will build into Deadlock against me, and that is invaluable when I'm able to build like 18 foundations against them and just never die because of it.
The threat of that card with the Deadlock is absolutely crazy. It's one of your strongest threats ever.
Next up, 3 copies of this card we've been talking so much about, Faith Shield.
I hate this card.
Yeah, this card's fucked up, which is exactly why we're mainboarding 3 of it. Again, just another card that allows us to circumvent the zones, and it's just all around a really, really good card. Next up, 4 copies of Sticky Balls. This card just literally reads, if I have it, the opponent has 2 cards stuffed in their pool.
Yeah,
right
away.
Which is super messed up. And the -4 speed ability, like on occasion it comes up, but I almost never use it. I almost always use it for the card pool stuffing. And because I'm running so many options, I'm able to just like shotgun it and like use it to mess up just like normal build turns after they poke too.
Yeah, you just can't poke into Mineta early game when he's got this on board, because then like every foundation, you're losing one foundation first of all, and then every foundation afterwards is gonna have +3 progressive on it. It's so hard.
All right, so 4 copies of that. Next up, 2 copies of a card that is obviously a really good meta staple, but honestly underperformed in the deck in the event. I put this card in last minute because I was looking for more lows, and I kind of regret putting it in because it actually did almost nothing in the deck.
It's definitely a little less valuable in your character than it is against others.
Yeah, I was mainly running it because it was a low block, but I regret making that decision. It just wasn't very relevant, and I almost never wanted to use it.
Yeah.
So I would have much rather had it been 2 extra copies of the next card that I'm about to show.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would have much rather run 4 copies of this card. Defrosting is nuts, because defrosting, not only is it really good with throws, it's really good with tape swing, it's really good specifically with Mineta's throw, because not only does it give it 2 damage, but it sets it at below its printed speed so that you can give it the throw keyword, making it a 10 damage throw, which is nuts. And it's a great DR piece, or speed reduction piece, if you know you're blocking or you know you're not blocking, right? So it's just all around a fantastic card. And next up, we will be moving on. I'm sideboarding the Universal Fighter.
Heck yeah.
Nah, I use it as a deck divider. Actually, moving on. Sideboard, our 4th copy of Creepy Realization for Momo.
Yeah,
can't really say much else about it. It's for Momo. Again, when I sit across from like Wall-Cling decks or Apathetic decks or Momo, 2 more copies of Irrefutable Force of Nature to help deal with that. If I sit across from another throw deck or something that's really hot on one zone, the extra copy of Wall-Cling and the extra copy of Faith Shield. The extra copy of Sports Festival Stadium, again, to fight Faith Shield and Momo. This sideboard was very much tailored to fight through my bad Momo matchup as much as possible. And last but not least, Ice Storm, 4 of it in the sideboard. This card is sick in the sideboard because it allows me to, I play the first game, see how their deck plays, and then if I win the first game and I go second, I can sideboard into this going second if I'm facing something like Tokiomi or something like that that's super aggressive, and then I can I usually side out of Tongue Whip. And then I have 8 copies of a 2 mid block that either stuffs the pool or does Breaker 2 in my main board, so that when they go in for that turn 2 hyper aggressive kill, I can have this 2 mid block plus all the speed reduction in the deck to be able to either stuff their pool or Breaker 2 them and shut down their turn. Plus, it's a good pull card and just a numerically strong card again in general.
So that is your entire main deck and sideboard, huh, Kyle?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is a big ol' 63 card deck with 20 attacks.
63 and 20 is actually pretty normal for like a standard size deck, which would have been right around that range anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're trying to turn 2 anyone as Mineta.
For sure.
Thank you so much for coming on the channel and showing off this deck. It's really, really cool. I think Mineta is still one of those, went from being probably the most overrated character to one of the more underrated ones in the meta. And despite struggling against some of the top dogs like Momo, still has a lot of power in this format as far as slowing down those really, really hyper-aggressive decks go.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you put in the work with Mineta, you can definitely get there with him, but you just need to understand he's not like some of these other characters that are free wins. You do have to play a really solid, smart defensive game with him. It's not just play the poke pass and you win the game, like a lot of people seemed to think early on it would be.
Yeah, well, there you have it, guys. That is Kyle Wright on the power of Grape Daddy, Grape Overlord, Minoru Mineta II himself. If you guys enjoyed this profile, I'd really appreciate it if you leave me some feedback down below in the comments. Love reading you guys' comments. And if you really liked what you saw, like or even subscribe so you can get some more MHA CCG content, and who knows, maybe even see Kyle Wright around some more if he keeps putting on such good performances in some of these events.
We'll certainly try.
Thank y'all so much if you made it all the way to the end of the video. We'll see you guys in the next one. This has been Levi and my man Kyle signing off.